to speak to the author. Okay, welcome, glad to see you all here today. To speak to the author, it's an event that we've all been putting together the last couple of months, and it's a chance for the public to get close to the authors, and the authors also to showcase their good work. Because what's the first thing you do? You've spent 2 years maybe writing a book, working on a project, and what happens next? You just look on it and on Amazon. I can remember when my book first got published, and I looked at the Amazon page, and I was like, yes, that's my book. I looked at it again, and I thought something's not right. You need to do something, some sort of an event, you need a platform where you can share the book, or it's just going to be sitting online and nobody's going to get to know it exists. So speak to the author and events like this is a chance for the authors to come out and showcase their good work and get it out there. And not just have it online, also get a chance to speak to the public, which is good. What do you prefer? Do you prefer online events, or do you like face-to-face, in-person events? What does it for you? What is your preference?
In-person, face-to-face.
In person? Yeah, I missed that, and that's the reason why I put this together, because the last 5 years, everything's been online. You can see that little squares, you know, looking at this space there, but you can't get to meet anybody, you can't talk to nobody or shake their hand, or, you know, there's something missing. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it online. I like online when it's winter time. When it's winter, when it's cold. And I said, yeah, we'll do it online, right? But it's nice and sunny today. It's good to come out somewhere and come to a book signing event and meet these lovely authors that we've got here today. So we've got 5 authors. I'll call out the names, but I'm not going to say too much about what we're going to talk about. I'll leave that to them. Yeah. So we've got Annika Spalding. The book I've got here for Annika, I know that Annika's done more than one book. So I've got here She Who Writes. I've got here. And then myself, my name's Carl Foster, by the way, and I'm the author of a book called SelfMade. I'm coming up next. So the order that we're going to actually do is the talk is in alphabet order. So what I'm reading here is in alphabet order. So we've got Annika Spalding, then myself, and then we've got Dr. Coco, who's written a book called Single and Too Tired to Mingle. I'm interested to hear what that's. Well, you know, it's all good. So, yeah. And then we've got Rosalind Daisy, Wide Awake in a Dream. Right? So, interesting myself in that one. And then we've got S.N. Clayton, A Shared History, Black Victoria, Book Volume 1. What I noticed is we've got a really good mixture of different types of books and the subject matter. My one is about self-help, personal development, but we've got a variety of different sort of topics and different focus on the books that we're sharing today. So yeah, so speak to the author. It's about the authors getting this platform to talk and showcase their good work. I think authors don't have enough platforms to do that. Am I right or am I wrong? I don't know. I feel like, I know in the past when I came up with mine, there was loads. I used to be invited to, can you come here and do this book thing, or there's a book thing here, or this. They had a variety of different ones. But I don't know, maybe because of the COVID, everything kind of just got shut down. And we're trying to get it back out. And that's what this is about, is to bring these type of events back out there, where people can come out, get together, mingle, network and everything, right? Which is what we want. So, before we kickstart and get on with our talks, I first need to warm up the audience a little bit to just get you ready for the show. So, I want to do a little bit of a little sound check with you. Your vocals ready? You warm up, you get some drink, you get to warm up the vocals a little bit. Yeah? Okay, so when I raise, we've got 2 sides here. We'll call this A, right? And we'll call this B. We'll just see if A can win B or B can win A. Because I want to see who's going to shout and dance. So when I raise my hand here, I want you to shout, speak to the author, right? And then I want to try B. And let's see who start with A. Get ready. Hope you drank lots of water. It's a warm sunny day, so let's try with A. Here we go. When I do this, speak to the author. 1, 2, 3. Speak to the author! Can we do better than that? Right, let's try again. Should I give A one more chance?
Yeah.
Here we go. So.
Speak to the author. Let's go.
Let's go to B. Right, when I raise my hand, belt out, speak to the author.
Speak to the author.
We'll try one more time. Give A a chance to relieve themselves. You know. All right. When I raise my left hand, I want A to belt out. Speak to the author. 1, 2, 3.
Speak to the author.
Right. That's better. So we'll do A and B together. Let's rock this forward. So here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Speak to the author.
Yes. So now let's try a little bit different. Let's add a little clap. A little clap to it. So when I say welcome to speak to the author, I want to hear. Right? So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to speak to the author. That's good. Alright. So we're getting the energy is coming. So I think one more exercise before we get our speakers ready to come on stage. So we're going to try a little bit different. I want to hear yay! Alright? So, and if you can add a clap, if you can add a clap to it, is that too difficult? If you can add a yay and a clap as well. You want to try? Should we do it? Welcome to Speak to the Author! Okay, so in alphabet order, we've got Annika Spalding coming up. She's going to tear up the stage for you. So, can we have a round of applause for Annika Spalding?
You all look beautiful today, by the way, can I just say? You all look really, really good. I was looking at everybody's outfits as they came in, so not just me, I'm shouting. So my name is Annika Spalding. I am an award-winning author from the West Midlands. I've written and published in the last 10 years 7 books, but we went on the first 5 of them because I published them because they were shit. I'm just going to be really, really honest with you about that. It's important to do that. And I'll tell you a little bit about why. So I was born to a teenage mother in 1986, and we had a really chaotic home life. I grew up in domestic abuse. I was sexually abused by just adults. We moved around a lot. We made lots of friends in and out of refuge. But one thing that always stayed for me really was reading books and novel stories. I could read before I went to school. I knew how to write my name before I went to school. And one thing about me was my head was always in a book. So naturally, as a young child, I wanted to be an author. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to go to Oxford University because everyone told me I was smart. Let's see what happens. But I was always really interested in reading and writing. And when you're a kid, especially a kid in the 90s, you don't really imagine that it's going to be possible. I just knew that I wanted to be like a huge writer one day. Yeah. We're just about to get to a little bit now. So when I was a teenager, I was always writing my ideas, my stories, my thoughts down in a notebook. I would still exercise When I was 18, my mum died from cancer. She was 35, and suddenly there was nobody really to confide in. There was nobody who could advocate for me, even if it was a little bit. And I was never an outgoing person. I was never chatting. I was always anxious all my life. But I had all these ideas. And so because I didn't have the confidence to speak about them, and because I didn't feel like I had the vocabulary to share my thoughts, I just always wrote them down. I got into a relationship that was challenging, and throughout that relationship, the writing that I did do was picked apart. I was questioned about it. What does this mean? Why are you writing about this? And it made me feel like, oh, I don't want to write anymore because he's questioning me all the time. And it's just an idea that I had in my head. I made it up. It was just a story. But he's questioning it, and it didn't make me feel good. So I feel like there were various times in my life where it would have made more sense just to quit. Because there was nobody in my immediate circle who was a writer and was doing anything remotely like I wanted to do. And whenever I did share, or it was, whenever my privacy was violated, it didn't leave me feeling very good. I was questioned about it. And then the most wonderful thing happened 11 years ago, and I got single, and it was great. So Coco's got one a bit later. And what happened was, it was more so that anything was possible now. Anything was possible. And I was really curious to see what would happen if I just explored new stuff. And I remember being on Facebook and seeing a spoken word event. And I didn't know what spoken word was, but I liked the description. So I wrote my friend and said, let's go to this. It was called Poetic Essence. And when I got there were people who were reading out poetry, performing poetry in a way I've never heard before. There was a mixture of people, genders, races, everything in the room, and it felt like I belonged somewhere. I went home that evening feeling drunk, and I'm not drunk anything, but I was like drunk on the poetry. And I was so inspired by seeing people being really brave, getting on stage and sharing their stories, sharing their words. Because if you think about it, internet wasn't massively big then. The only writers I knew were on the internet. They weren't in person, but here I was in a room full of creative people of different kinds, sharing their art. Later that month, I finished writing my first book, which was a novel. And I was curious to see what I could do next. My novel was about a woman it's called Shattered Dreams, and it's about a woman who leaves an abusive relationship and she goes back to her family and tries to rebuild her life. And I was so shocked that I wrote a book. I really was. I always wanted to, but I never knew that I was going to finish it. It was just one of those, I'm going to write a book one day and just never get around to doing it. And then I did that. And then I was prepared for what would come after I'd written the book. And I've got the writing book. I'm an obsessive person. I overthink. If I can channel that into a creative project, amazing. So I've written a number of books. I've written a poetry book. I've written a collection of short stories, a quote book, a self-help book. And remember when I told you all that I've written and published 7 books and I only published the first 5 because they were shit? They were. And to no disrespect, it's part of the journey. I got the writing book when I used to write for an online magazine. I used to go to music events like local performers and event presidents and come back and write a review. And then I started branching out and writing interviews on people that I felt were inspirational in the city, doing different things. And I remember interviewing this photographer and sending back the draft, which I would never do now, and she picked it apart and tagged the editor and wrote capital letters and CC'd this, and it just destroyed me. And my confidence was on the floor. And I found then that nobody ever made me feel like that again. Because up until that point, I just wanted to write everything in confidence. I just wanted to get my words out there and let somebody to see them. So I did what any normal person does, and I went on the internet and I looked for a course. And I found a creative and professional writing degree at the University of Wolverhampton. 9 months. I thought, let me give this a go. And what's really interesting about that is that I've done an access to higher education course. Children when they were little, they would have been like 2 and 5. there was a point where I just really wanted to get my words out, and I just wanted to tell my story, and I just wanted to get all these ideas out and have people experience them. And what changed was that now I was more interested in the quality of those words, which is why I unpublished them, simply because I felt if somebody was coming across my work for the first time, I'd want them to get the very best of whatever that was. Writing's the journey. I think so many of us put pressure on ourselves to be perfect the first time round, and we're not. We really are not. Is anybody here wanting to write a book? Take these words with them. But also you've got to allow yourself to be imperfect, okay? You've got to allow yourself just to get the words on the page. What I did with my first few books is something that I wasn't doing now. I pretty much could have published the first draft with the liking that I did myself. You know, because I just wanted it out. Whereas now I get somebody else to read and edit it. And then there's a process that we learn with time, right? I know everything 10 years ago. Didn't do anything at all. So what I'm going to read for you today is an excerpt from my memoir which I published a few years ago, which is called She Who Writes. Why has she written a memoir? She looks about 12. Well, simply because on social media, I've developed a bit of a following because I was sharing my experiences of mental health, of overcoming domestic abuse, of being a single mother, and I felt like I just needed to tell my story and I hadn't done it all in one place. And I started going to therapy and had trauma-focused therapy, and it just changed everything. And so at around the same time I started writing my story, and it was so interesting because when I finished writing this, it was almost like I closed the chapter. So the woman who wrote this isn't the woman that stands before you now, it's like an era of my life. Okay, so I'm going to read the introduction. I don't think there's much swearing in this. The idea for this book didn't come after a worldwide Instagram trend about sisterhood. It isn't the result of attending a women-only event or watching films with strong female leads, or even because I feel inspired by women everywhere, although I do. The idea of this book was born from the desire to retreat and begin investing my time and energy back into myself. The very concept of this book was born from just wanting to be left alone, unprodded and unbothered, so that I could spend time falling in love with writing again and finally get to know the woman I had become. It was born from the desire to feel grounded, centred, complete, at peace, in alignment, on the right path, and living my best life, but all for myself. As I tap away at my laptop keyboard and watch the words fill the screen, I can feel whispers of self-doubt creating a crowd of chatter in my mind. I've never written anything so intimate or so honest. There are parts of my story that I've kept in the dark for years because the shame attached to it was too big a burden to bring it out into the light. It just seemed too much for me to carry alone under a spotlight, but I knew this story needed more eyes on it. I knew I wasn't alone, not really, and so I had to write it all down. I believe in my story because I've lived it, and I hope my writing does its justice in sharing it with you. Moments of doubt and fear have plagued every writing session, but the closer I get to finishing this book, the more I believe that publishing my truth is absolutely the right thing to do. Some of the most important conversations are those you have with yourself, and this could be the very difference between you persevering despite hardship or giving up completely. I've worked so hard to find value in my voice, spent years in unwrapping shame and learning to accept the truth laying beneath it. I've learned how to be on my own. I've learned to be my own cheerleader and encourager of the truth, but it's been so clear that others prefer me to stay silent. There are people who don't want me to write this, who don't want to recognise themselves in my words, and who aren't willing to be accountable for the role they played in the story of my life. Those same people have ideas and assumptions on how I will fill those pages, but I must add, the version of me they think they know died a long time ago. Speaking the truth has implications for everybody, but so does living a lie. I write this now because I want you to know that I believe in myself. I always did, even if it was just a little bit, even if it was in secret. Working on my self-belief is a lifelong process. Any lessons I gained have never been easy to hold on to. Sometimes faith in myself and faith in my creativity are at two different levels. I'm looking at my faith in writing, sharing my messages that matter, connecting with people through words. All of that is stronger than the negative attitudes I've held and encountered. Purpose outweighs doubt every single time. I don't know for sure if what I write will be received with love or understood, but I know I'm meant to share it. I knew I'd reach a time in my life when I'd be ready to write about my experiences, and it would be aligned with my willingness to let go of the trauma. I'm telling you, I'm writing this because I feel called to, and I'll stop writing it when I've said all I need to say. I wrote this book for the different versions of me, the woman I used to be, and now I'm more likely than not. So many women exist in those different versions of me, so maybe it's fair to say I wrote this book for them too. Women, self-defining women, women who have survived trauma and are living with the aftermath, women who were always told to shut up and be quiet, women who lived in silence and perhaps still do, women who have found their voice and like the sound of it and speak at every given opportunity, women who are ready to define their experience of womanhood on their terms. I wrote this book for us because we matter, you matter, and we know that, right? On paper, on Instagram, in WhatsApp messengers, and on postcards with positive statements printed in bright colours. That is how we know we matter, okay? But if we really did, we'd feel it, wouldn't we? Do you feel it? In the depths of your stomach, underneath your ribcage, and behind your ladder where your inner child lives, can you feel with certainty that you matter? I don't, not always. It's a battle between my head and my heart, logic and emotion. It's never been a major issue because I've only needed one to survive, but at the right age of 30-something, I realised it's time to put down my survival kit. Focusing on myself wasn't born out of selfishness, but out of self-love and self-respect. It came from understanding that I need to build myself a firm foundation. But that can't happen if I keep sacrificing my own well-being to make everyone else happy. That while I love sisterhood and contribute to it, I can't do that if it is at the expense of who I am and what I need to thrive. This memoir is the result of me choosing me and not feeling regretful or guilty or bad for it. Because after years and years of choosing everyone else and putting their wants above my needs, I finally had enough. I've cracked the people-pleasing code and have decided that from now on, my happiness will be at the core of everything I do. But even though I wrote this for me and because of me, dear sister, this book is also for you. Thank you.
This is a chance for you to ask the author any questions about the journey, what you've heard, what you've picked up from what she said.
Thank you so much for sharing with such honesty and courage. How did you feel the first time you published what you call shit, but I didn't hear shit?
Okay, alright. That's a really great question. Thank you for your compliment. When I wrote my book and I published it, I used to take copies of it to networking events, and I was almost ashamed of it in a way. And it took me a long time for me to accept that I am an author, it's real, and there's something about what's happening in reality and what's still going on inside. So it's kind of like being a journey over the years. But I think what's helped is that I've gathered evidence to say that I'm a writer, so that when I'm having those negative thoughts, I can say, well, you journal every day. You read books about writing, you do, so I can challenge it, but I think I didn't grow up believing in myself, so it's almost like I've had to like learn it, but I think, yeah, I was really embarrassed, which is amazing considering some things that people do aren't embarrassed of. I was embarrassed I wrote a book, but I think it's because I didn't know anyone else that had, and I was like the first in my family, but when I look back on it now, and I look back at the journey, and I look back at what was going on at the time, I'm really proud that I did, because I did something that I wanted to do, but didn't know what to do.
I'm grateful for you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. That was really inspiring. What I wanted to ask is, how did you manage your emotions when writing that book? Because obviously we're talking about a lot of process.
Yeah. With this book, while I was doing that for years, but there's something about that particular round where I was uncovering. I wasn't doing the same old story, if that makes sense. I was actually going a lot deeper, and it wasn't until that point that I felt able to actually write my own story. But it kind of gave me a sense of ownership, because when I wrote it down and I read it, I could afford myself some compassion, because while it was still in my head, I'm like, well, I should be fine, I don't know why I'm like this. But actually reading it on paper, it's like, well, there's not, I'm not surprised that you struggle with your mental health, because that's a lot for one person. So when I do writing workshops, I really encourage it, because when it's just in our minds, we don't see ourselves, we don't really give credit to the journey that we've been on. But if it's somebody else, if we were to read it about somebody else, we'd have all the compassion for it. Yeah, directly. Yeah.
So in writing the novel, I'm assuming you did lots of research. Did you read lots of other memoirs, and was there a particular memoir that sort of inspired you?
One of the best memoirs I've ever read. It's not really, it's a kind of memoir, but not really, but on writing by Stephen King. Have you read that?
Yes.
So it's kind of part memoir, part like writing guide, which is one of the better ones. But when I wrote my novel, I didn't do loads of research in terms of the writing aspect, so I just had an idea. But what I already knew about was the process of a woman leaving domestic abuse and going into refuge, because I watched my mum do it, but also I used to work in refuge as a support worker for children. So I witnessed the processes of part in the novel, which you can't access now, sorry guys, like you really can't. Maybe one day I'll re-edit it, you can. As a part of the process where she goes in and she sees a support worker, and having been on the side, I was able to kind of write about it in a way that was correct. Because I'm more mindful of when people read it, it needs to feel realistic, doesn't it? It's about real life issues.
So I'm doing two roles today at this event. I'm hosting the event, but I'm also one of the authors. So it's my turn to share with you, I guess, my journey and how I became an author. So many years ago, I wrote a book called SelfMade, Finding the Goodness and Greatness Within Yourself. And people often say to me, well, what's the book about? So the short of the book is, it's about a young boy growing up in the 70s and 80s who couldn't read or write. And then through perseverance, grows up to become an author and speaker and coach, and basically that's my story. And as a kid, I was struggling with reading and writing. My parents were going through divorce, and I think it just impacted me in that way. Often we sometimes don't realise what is the impact of divorce on the children. How does divorce affect young children at, say, 3 or 4 years old, with the parents separating, in some cases with the siblings split in half. I grew up with, I've got 4 sisters and there's me and an older brother, so there's 6 of us in the family. And at some point we were split in half as well. My older siblings went to live somewhere else, and I stayed with my mum and my 2 sisters. And I just found I couldn't concentrate in school. I would be in the class and just in a different world. I wasn't even sleeping at night. I was just a bit of a mess. And I can remember one day in class, half asleep, trying to stay awake, and the teacher's voice was just like a faint echo in the back of my ear. And he asked me to come to the front of the class to read. Problem is, I can't read. So it was a very humiliating experience. I remember just walking to the front of the class, and the kids either side just sort of sniggering under their breath. And then finally I got to the front of the classroom, and I turned the page and I tried to read, and the words just wouldn't come out. I couldn't make any sense of it. I tried again, just trying to improvise, and it just wouldn't happen. And the teacher just said, go and sit back at your desk right now. And I remember just walking back to the desk and just in that moment. But that was just a regular time of life for me. That was my school life. That was my journey. And I wasn't the only one. There was many kids struggling, breathing, right? I don't know if we had autism, I don't know if we had ADHD, I don't know if it was dyslexia back in the 70s and 80s, I don't even remember hearing about that stuff. And people just said, you're not smart, you're stupid, you're this, you're that, you know. So you had to take all the insults, and some kids just gave up, and some kids, they just lived through it and last through it because their self-esteem is so destroyed. But something made me just keep trying. And we grow, human beings, we grow through the challenge. We don't grow through the safety net. I mean, a lot of my friends when I went to school, they decided to play it safe because, you know, when you're in that situation, to move forward, you're going to have to really try and push yourself to do things you don't know how to do. And you're going to fail, and you're going to make a fool of yourself. And not many people want to go through that line of messing up. I had to be able to mess up. I had to be able to commit mistakes in order to progress forward. A lot of my friends didn't want that. They wanted to be cool. They wanted to just, you know, be smooth and cool, not slip up. But sometimes you've got to slip up in order to be your authentic self. You can't be smooth all the time. You can't be right all the time. We learn through trial and error. And for me, it was a case of being determined and pushing myself to the deep end. Even doing something like this, I couldn't do this when I was young. But I was like a shy, introvert, quiet child. And I pushed myself to the deep end one time. Because I was in a special needs class. And there was a teacher of mine called Miss Hall, lovely lady. I don't know if she's with us now. And she suggested that I go to Anna Shear's Theatre. And for a shy, quiet person, that's the last place you would want to go. You know, I went to hide under a rock or something would help me. But I went. And then when I went to Anna Shear's, I was like, nervous as hell. And Anna, she never joked. Anna would give you one line, and she'd say, go on stage by yourself and create something. So you had to improvise. I mean, the line could be anything. It could be, you left the door open, and then you got to build on that. Who left the door open? What is this? And you would be improvising. So me being like 30 years old at the time, being there, I was like, really? You sort of like saw all the other kids going up, and then you're like the next one to go up. You know, oh gosh, there's like 3 more in front of me. What am I going to say? What am I going to add to that line? But it got me to think. It challenged me, and it pushed me. It was hard. And I did it for a few years, and I got a chance to, I don't know if you guys remember a TV show called Grange Hill. Back in the day, there was a TV show called Grange Hill, group of kids and stuff like that. And I used to watch it, I was a big fan. And when I went to Anna Shear's, she said, is there any kids who want to be an extra in Grange Hill? There's an opportunity. And I said, yeah, all right, I'll do it. So I got a chance to do that. That helped me to develop my confidence, my self-esteem, and that's what it's about, people. You've just got to you've got to challenge yourself. We grow through challenges. So enough of me chatting about that. Let me give you a little taste of the book. I'll share a couple of pages. So the book is called SelfMade, Finding the Goodness and Greatness Within Yourself. I was trying to find the goodness and greatness within myself, but I think we're all trying to do that, aren't we? Aren't we all trying to find our best self? Yeah, it's an ongoing process, it never ends. You do the training course, you get the promotion at work, the next year you do the same thing again, you're trying to do better all the time. And I think that's a good thing. I think when we give up, when we become complacent, and we say, this is it. No. Never say this is it. Be grateful, yes, but never be satisfied. Fuel your hunger. Fuel your hunger for growth, for progress, for growth and expansion, to be better, to do better. Don't give up your hunger. Keep pushing. So I'll read an extract from the book. Just to push that start. Okay. So SelfMade explains. This book is about the challenges that one faces with oneself in order to achieve success in life. It's about overcoming the temptation to quit, the temptation to be sidetracked and discouraged by others, and about our inner demons which laugh at us and try to keep us stuck where we are. We may have the desire, we may have the dream, but do we have the willpower, the power and drive to will? So many big ideas today lie in the graveyard because the person who had them didn't stay on track for their implementation. They gave them such obstacles, and they listened to negative self-talk in their own mind. Their friends and relatives perhaps didn't support them. They got discouraged and forgot the vision that excited them in the first place. To achieve your goals in life, you must be persistent and never quit. You must express drive and determination and a burning desire to succeed. You must have a powerful belief that you can win, and then surround yourself with like-minded people that will keep you on track. You can also ensure your success by unlocking the secrets to your subconscious mind, which will create a great life for you and the ones you care about. Your only challenge is you. This book will inspire you to take control of yourself and change your life for the better. This book is about remaking yourself so that you can be everything you should be. Now, let's begin. Thank you. So you've got to go out there, you've got to hold on to that dream. You can't let nothing or nobody hold you back on it. And there's going to be times when you feel like crap. There's going to be times when you can't even get out of bed. Keep fighting. The one thing you've got is that vision. Even if you're feeling down, if you're feeling low, you've got the vision. You hold on to that vision, you build onto that vision. That's one of the key things. I remember when I was writing my book and it wasn't published yet, and I had a copy, a cover of the book, just the cover, and I put it over another book, and I used to position it in my bed. So every time I woke up, I was half asleep, but I was like, okay, this is what, all right, I'm going to get on. Let me write one more chapter. Let's sort something out. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. So it just reminded me, this is why you're right today. This is what you've got to get on, right? So that's the key thing. Don't give up. Keep going. Keep going. So, ladies and gentlemen, any questions at all? Is there anything you want me to add lib on? Anything you want to know more about?
Yeah.
Okay, go this gentleman. Okay.
And who supported you along the way?
With the book?
Well, with everything.
Oh, in life. I think one thing I love about my mum is the way my mum raised me. Although I was struggling at school and I had some kind of learning issues or something, my mum never held back with me. My mum was like, here's a list of the shopping, go around the corner and get some Okay, cool. So that's how she was. This needs doing, hoover up the front room, take the black bags out. She never held back, she treated me the same as the 6 kids. And I think that was good because it made me, okay, I'll do it. I mean, she could have said, okay, he's struggling at school, so I leave him there and I let the other siblings do the work. But she was like, you're still doing it. And it helped. You know, by the time I was about 18 years old, I passed my driving test. I was driving my mum and my gran, driving my gran to church, driving my mum to the shops. You know, so I mean, for a kid that was struggling, that was a good thing. You know, so I think the environment that I was in pushed me and helped me, and that's what done it for me. And also being prepared to, like I said, you've got to be prepared to fall on your face. You've got to be prepared to get embarrassed sometimes. You've got to be prepared to mess up. But at the end of that is the reward. It's painful if you don't do nothing about it. It's painful when you do something about it. But the thing is, when you're doing something about it, at the end of that pain, there's a reward. You come out the other side. It doesn't stay the same. So you've got to, you've got to believe in yourself, basically. You have to believe in yourself. And gentlemen, there, please.
I think you kind of answered my question. I was going to say, how did you install your self-belief?
Yeah, it's just persistence, really. I look back. It's a long time ago, but I look back. I just give, and my mom's religious. I would say, give God thanks. That I stayed on the right path. Because growing up here in East London, there's so many paths I could have taken. I could have said, well, it's not working out in school. I might be going to crime, drugs, whatever. But my parents raised me strict, and they raised us righteous. So I wasn't going to do none of that. I'd rather starve than do anything dishonest. It was just a case of going for it and going for it. And I'm just grateful that I made it through. And what I can say to everybody is, you just keep trying. Now I do coaching with young people, volunteer, and that's what I do. And I love it. thank you. I hope me sharing this journey helps. Thank you. Now, introduce to you Dr. Coco Novak. Give her a round of applause.
Hi everyone. My name is Coco. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you, Carl, for organising this quite unique event. You guys got a high standard today. Alright, it's kind of my first event of this kind, so it's really nice to get that invite. So let me introduce myself, and then of course I'll read something from the book, and then happy to answer any questions. So I have a PhD from biochemistry and molecular biology. And towards the end of my studies, I became pregnant with my first son, and then, despite having kind of like a potentially academic career, me, my partner, and the baby moved to Zurich for a while because my partner was there on a postdoc. And I always thought I would have my own company someday, but I never knew what I would do in life. And whilst living in Zurich, obviously I had a small baby and there was nothing much to do. I found this really cool baby store, and I'm originally from Slovenia, and we had none of those products in Slovenia, and they were so nice. And I thought, you know what, let me open a baby store with no business experience, no anything. So I found a few brands that I liked, I set up a deal with them, and we went back to Slovenia when my oldest son was about 7 months old at the time. And I opened up a baby store next to the main competitor in the country. And so I had that for 5 years. I had to go and do an MBA in between because I didn't know anything about economics, so I thought this is not great. And coming towards, when I had my business, which was fast growing, the deal was that my partner kind of takes care of the kids a little bit more whilst I focus on my business, and then if I close down the business, he can do whatever he wants and I'll take care of the kids more than he does that thing. And so towards the recession in 2009, I closed down my company, and my now ex-partner by this time decided he wants to go back to London, because he's originally from London. And so I said, okay, fine, because Slovenia is a tiny country, there's not much to do. And despite the fact that we were separated and broken up, we always remained amicable and friends, and it was actually very, very sad to see him go, especially as he had 2 boys by this time. So off he goes to London, he comes and goes to see the kids, and then I did part of my PhD here in London as well, and I always wanted to live there. So one day I give him a call and say, listen, we're coming to London. You have to prepare and sort everything out for the kids to come. So we came to London in 2014, and basically I hated all the jobs that I did. I didn't really know what I wanted to do anymore, and I wasn't happy with anything. And so these career pivots are written in my book as well. And so I thought to myself, what do I really enjoy doing in life? And I thought the only thing that I really like is being on a tennis court and playing tennis. Who doesn't? So I thought, how would that ever help me in life? And then at the same time, 2 things happened. One of my coaches just kind of came to me and said, you could easily be a tennis coach. And I'm like, there's no way I could be a tennis coach. And he goes, yes, you could. And literally that same week, they put this guy to be my line manager at work, and I'm like, there is no way this guy's going to be my line manager at work, and so I'm like, this is not my life. And so that same evening I came home and I signed up to the LTA website and to my level 1 coaching kind of degree, I guess. And so at 45, I became a level 3 tennis coach. I was by far the oldest one at the course. I think the next one down was maybe 28. So I hung out with this 19-year-old, we had a really good time, it was really fun. And so I think the point is really, if you want to do something in life, and even if you want to change your career to something dramatic, because when I came out that I want to be a tennis coach, everyone around me was like, oh, they just went quiet, they didn't even say no. They couldn't believe this was actually even happening. However, I have to say I have never been happier since. I love my tennis coaching career. I also manage a tennis venue, and so I'm really kind of the best of both worlds, managing and also playing tennis. It's great, because I think I have a slight touch of ADHD, so it's great that I'm out of the office half the day and doing something else. So how did this book come about? So I've been living here permanently about 10 years, and I
too tired to mingle. Obviously, those of you who have kids and are single know. I understand. But how I came about to writing this book, I always thought I would write a book, but I never kind of knew when or how or what would it be. And so I think it was kind of January or February last year. I was at a friend's place for brunch, and I was telling her some stories from my work and some stuff, and she's like, "You should definitely have a podcast," because it was also funny. And I said, "Let's have it together," because I know nothing about podcasting. And then we couldn't find a date or a time when we would do it together. And I said, "You know what? Let me just write a book." So I started last year in March, and I published it in December last year. So it's like a baby book. It's just been published. And so of course, because my tennis career is not enough 24/7, so I'm now an author. I have a podcast, so I did decide to do a podcast, which I started in March this year. So I interview people, and the topic is kind of relationships. And it's already got more than 16,000 subscribers and over 150,000 views, so that's really exciting. And I'm also a public speaker, and so I speak on the topic of squiggly careers, which I've had, on the 3 pillars of personal happiness, which is something that I'll read about. It's the first chapter of the book. And also failure, because I believe that there's no such thing as failure. Even if something's not going my way, or I've had to close a company, or something's not happening, it's all a learning experience. So as long as you learn from it and you don't do it again, apart from if you've like gambled your house away, that's not good, that's a failure. everything else should be a learning experience, and that's how you don't do it again. So let's go on to reading a couple of chapters from my book. So I've printed it out just because it's like, I find it a trick to read from the book. So I'll just read it out. Chapter 1, 3 pillars of personal happiness. I had a carefree life until the age of 13. I was young, still in school, okay looking, the world was at my feet. I had wonderful boyfriends, and looking back, I have no idea how great these guys were. I took them for granted. I had my first child at 30, second one at 33, and I was with Matthew, my partner and the father of my kids. Life appeared to be ticking along great. However, I started noticing a progressive unhappiness creeping in. And while browsing through some recent photos, I couldn't help but notice I didn't look happy on any of them. I didn't resemble my usual chirpy self. Something felt off and things weren't right. Over the course of the next 2 years, I embarked on a personal journey to understand why I no longer recognize the happy, peaceful girl I once was. I needed to figure out what it was and how to address it. And while I enjoyed running my own company and found fulfillment in my work, I didn't experience the same level of contentment when I was at home. The weekends had a strange vibe, and I didn't enjoy going anywhere with Matthew. I don't want to place blame on him because we were both trying our best, but we were not as emotionally close as I needed us to be. Matthew and I had many difficult conversations whilst I was trying to figure out what the issue was. We would discuss different aspects of our relationships, often leading to tears from both of us. We would experience a brief improvement in our connection for a few days, only to return to our usual routine. After going through a few cycles of these conversations, I decided they were too emotionally draining and yielded no significant results. I decided to stop them. The growing distance between us became inevitable, as I required more emotional connection than he was willing to provide. He was hesitant to open up to me, feeling he would get hurt, only to end up with the result that he feared. It took me 2 years to finally identify what was important to me in my life. I named these values in the 3 pillars. So 1 was my children's well-being, 2 was my work, and 3 is my partner. In no particular order, they're all important. And so, I guess if you don't have 2 years to go through your personal values and what would be important to you, I think the overriding question, kind of for me now, although these 3 pillars still are really relevant to me now as they were back then. So the overriding question that one can ask themselves is, do I want to be here? And specifically, would I want to be anywhere else? So sometimes even if it's tough, but we still want to be there, that's pretty exciting. That's chapter 1. Chapter 2, on relationships. It's complicated. This is a phrase I hear most often when I'm on yet another date with a guy who is in a relationship. Kudos to the latest one who at least let me know he was in a relationship. Why agreed to go on a date with me in the first place on a Wednesday when that was a day when we both had availability? Chatting over drinks, apparently his current relationship was complicated. The guy before that forgot to tell me he was married, and the guy before that, well, it's complicated. 40s, or is it related to our age group, 40 and above? In truth, I'm not someone who particularly enjoys dating. I prefer the organic process of meeting someone, falling in love, having a lasting relationship. Yeah, who does it? So, that's chapter 2. There's more, there's not just that. Chapter 7, on parents. I once read that being self-sufficient can also be a weakness rather than just a strength. I found this notion intriguing as it resonates so much with our own behavior. Apparently this trait develops from a lack of trust in parents during one's formative years. As a result, you learn to manage everything by yourself. You don't depend on others due to fear of disappointment. To illustrate this point, when I was at university, I considered becoming a tour guide in my spare time. I pitched this idea to my mother and she responded, "You can't be a tour guide, you don't have the right education." So I went ahead, obtained my certificate and spent 5 years as a tour guide. It was a great way to earn money during university and a great excuse to travel. Tell me I can't do something I'm passionate about and watch me prove you wrong. Back in the day, I was the only student from the Faculty of Farming, which is my original degree, to ever earn a PhD from the Faculty of Medicine, and probably the only PhD to own a baby store, or to become a tennis coach for that matter. Yes, changing direction is challenging, but you can become or do anything you want to if you're willing to put in the effort. Take my tennis career for instance. I was 45 years old when I became a level 3 tennis coach. It's quite high. I never in my life thought I would even be a level 1. So, a level 3 license was something I never thought I could achieve. It took me 4 attempts to pass, 6 months longer than it should have. Foolishly, I didn't seek out a mentor like I was supposed to because, I was too busy. But I wasn't too busy to spend 6 months extra on it. So, I persevered and I got it done. It might have been a long and quite painful journey, but I accomplished it. We have the choice to quit any day, but choose to quit tomorrow, not today. Keep persevering and you'll reach your goals, I promise you. And don't let the opinions of others deter you. It's your life, your decisions, and your dreams. Thank you.
So any questions for Dr. Novak?
Come
on. Question.
I love your energy and I love the joy that you bring to telling us your story. But in the journey that you've gone through, and all the changes, at any given point did you think I need to stop changing and just hold in any particular sense?
That's a really good question, actually. That's why I think I have a slight touch of ADHD, perhaps. If not just more than a slight. So, I really enjoyed my PhD. I really enjoyed my company, and I'm really enjoying being a tennis coach. And now, kind of with this book and my YouTube channel, I'm really loving kind of the media aspect of it. So, one, in my 3 pillars, let's say, of personal happiness, work is one of the factors because I really figured out, I want to enjoy what I do. I can't be in a job when I'm like, okay, I'm earning X amount of money, I'm paying my bills, and that's my life. I've actually quit jobs without having a job lined up, just because I was willing to take it. So I'll give you an example. So before I became a tennis coach, the company that gave me this baby boss, like I call him in my work. So we were doing events, and we finished kind of booking one event up. It was midsummer, it was August, and we were about to start another event. And I'm like, okay, great. Between these 2 events, I'm going to go and take my summer holiday. And then he goes like, no, you're not having a summer holiday. I'm like, dude, what the hell? So I was really tired, and it's summer, and my kids were already off on holiday with their dad, and I'm like, what? And so I have a very active inner teenager, so as soon as he said, no, you cannot go on holiday, I basically started to become stronger. Do you want me to open it for you? So I started to become strawberry. I started answering the phone, like rocking on my chair and stuff, like on my office chair and stuff like that. And then so one morning he calls me in his office. It was literally like 10:30, 9:30 a.m. And he's like, what was that? And I'm like, what? Like on that phone, I'm like, what? And I'm like, I want a summer holiday. He goes, you're not getting a summer holiday. And I said, and then he goes, if you don't like something, you can leave. And I'm like, you know what? That's a great idea. So I just stood up and left. I could have just sat there and go, okay, I'm not going to get a summer holiday and work. I'm like, no. And that's when I became a tennis coach. So that was like, it was a really 20 and 17. So at that time, they were 15 and 13, 12, right? And like I was mostly, let's say, I had them most of the time. And so I actually asked them, guys, do you mind if I become a tennis coach? Because it's an afternoon job. So obviously you play tennis when everyone else, not when you're at work, but like when you're in your spare time. And they said, Mother, if it makes you happy, go and do it. Because that's always what I've told them as well. If you want to do something, just go. I prefer that you do a lot of things in life. And we come back to failure. There's no such thing as failure. You will just realize that you don't like something or you're not really good at something. It doesn't really matter. You can either be better or you just change it and do what you want. Because the more things that you do in life, that's when you find things that you enjoy. So then they said, yeah, if it makes me happy, let me just do it. And they've been great. So yeah. Yes. So, yeah.
Are you still too tired to mingle?
Good question. And it's really interesting actually. Women always ask me that question. And then they're quite concerned. Are you really too tired to mingle? So, I'm not too tired for the right person. Complicated. It's not complicated, it's easy. And then what men ask me is like, oh, are you just waiting for the perfect man? No, it's just perfect for me. Yes.
I was going to say, with all the energy, with all the life experience, and living your life on the premise of doing things that just make you happy, have your children also inherited that same essence?
Ah, very good question actually. Inherited genetics, that's right. So inheritance is very good. Thanks so much. I have two children who are completely different. It's like literally one got genes A, one got genes B. The older one is more like me. He's a free spirit. So he was studying kind of engineering until his A levels, and then it was time to go to university. And then I was kind of looking at the child, and I'm like, this is not an engineer, right? And then I was really thinking about what would be good for this child to study. Obviously, if he wanted to do engineering, he would have done it. And I said to him, do you want to study sports? And then he just lit up. And so now he's studying sports. He passed his entrance exams, and he did everything, and so he's living the best life imaginable right now. The younger one is more, he's not, what is the word? He just likes things the way that he likes things. Even as a baby, he wouldn't leave the house. If I left the house, he would just cry by the time I got to the door. So I would have the stroller in one hand and him in the other crying. So I'm like, okay, fine, then we'll just be at home if you don't want to go anywhere. And he's still like that. I think he wants to study finances. I think the first job that he's going to have for the rest of his life. And so he's completely different. So even though they're like raised by me most of the time, obviously like we're still, friends with my ex or whatever. It's just a genetic thing. So he's like, we were just on holiday right now, and I'm just like, dude, you're so boring. Like, you don't say anything, you don't talk to me. I'm like, why would I even travel with you? I didn't say that to him, and don't look at that video. But they're completely different. The first one is kind of like me, and we travel really well, and we love hanging out. He comes to yoga with me, and to the younger one, I'm like, come to yoga class with me. He's like, Mother, stop asking me that. I'm not going to go. So, there you go. Two different kids.
Can we have a round of applause for Dr. Nova? Okay, coming up next, we've got Roslyn Daisy. And Roslyn's going to be talking about wide awake in a dream. Can we have a round of applause for Roslyn Daisy?
So who am I? Well, I'm Roslyn Daisy. I'm 58 years old and a mother of 3 boys. My eldest son is 34, Stefan, who's just got married and has a little boy. My middle son's 22, Ethan, and That's where my passion for children and families grew. I've always been interested in anthropology and always had a humanistic approach to my profession. I qualified as a social worker and probation officer and worked with adult offenders for a while. Then I moved into youth justice and worked as an operational manager for a while up until I had a stroke. So what happened to me? Well, at that time I was studying a course, a postgraduate diploma in forensic psychotherapeutic studies, because as a manager in youth justice I was responsible for the high-risk dangerous offenders, so that course sort of fitted with what I was doing at that time. I was happy with the direction my career was going. My youngest son was 18 months old and just started to become independent. He was being potty trained, putting it down his dummy and his bottle. My eldest was preparing for his A-levels and planning his next steps to university. And my middle son was 6 years old and just enjoying being a child. On the day of the stroke, I was handing in my essay on trauma. Did you hear that? I was handing in an essay on trauma. And then that was the time I had the most traumatic event of my life. Prior to that, I was perfectly healthy, no high blood pressure or any indicators for a stroke. I became a curiosity to the consultants in charge of me, so much so that they had to find out what caused it. Now I'm going to read 3 extracts from my book, so hopefully it will give you a picture of me, who I am, and what I've been through. So this first snippet I'm going to read is from my friend Susie Marriott, who was with me at the time that I had the stroke on the 11th of March 2008. So the class day at the Portland Clinic began like every other day. Although we were all particularly stressed, as we had a lot of work to complete and hand in, Ross, Mila and I went upstairs for our weekly group supervision session. During our session, I noticed that Ross's face changed. The side of her mouth and the whole side of her face began to slowly droop. And I stupidly said to her, "Ross, what happened to your face?" As she looked at me, I realized, as I was saying it, that something neurological was happening. In fact, I think I realized that she was having a stroke. But I didn't quite believe that this is what was actually happening. I kept thinking, no, she's too young. It can't be that. We're in class. It's just another ordinary day. It must be something else. But what? Mila and our supervisor realized at the same time that something serious was happening, and we all jumped into action. Our supervisor leapt up and said she would go downstairs and fetch one of the doctors, and Mila and I agreed that was a good idea, and she left the room. The 3 of us sat there and waited. It all became a bit of a blur. Ross was stating that she felt really strange, and Mila and I reassured her that help was coming. I think we both regained our composure and slipped into nurse mode. With that, one of the medics came into the room and asked her some questions. She then turned to us and stated that Ross had to go to hospital immediately and an ambulance had been called and was on its way. The medics then asked if someone would go with her, and I said I would, of course. The doctor continued to speak to Ross, and Mila and I went down to join the rest of the group. We told our peers that Ross was very, very ill and we were waiting for an ambulance to arrive to take her to hospital. The ambulance and paramedics arrived and assessed Ross. They asked her name and how she was feeling and what had happened. I recall that she was able to answer but had a speech impediment. They confirmed that they would be taking her to hospital now and asked if anyone was coming, and I said that I was, and I took Ross's bag for her. The paramedics took her out to the ambulance on a chair. Ross was worried about letting her husband and children know what was happening, and I reassured her that I would call her husband once we got to the hospital. I remember asking one of the paramedics, as we were getting into the ambulance, if Ross was having a stroke, knowing deep down that the answer to this question was yes, although I hoped it was no. And he said that he could not say at this time, as she needed further assessment. I must have looked concerned, because he told me try not to worry, because they were taking her to one of the best hospitals in London, and she would be in very safe hands. I could hear the ambulance siren sounding loudly as we quickly progressed to the hospital. We seemed to get there very quickly. So that gives you an idea of what I was doing on the day, and what happened, and how I ended up in hospital. tumour the size of an egg lodged in my neck, not visible on the outside. It was not obstructing my airways or throat, so I didn't know it was there, and it had been there for a long time growing. So did you hear that? I had a tumour the size of an egg in my neck, and I didn't know it was there. I had surgery, and they removed it and they cut me from there to there. So it was a big thing, but I didn't know it was there. So in a way, my dad used to have a saying. He used to say, with every problem there's a blessing, with every disappointment there's a blessing. So for me, having the stroke saved my life, because otherwise that could have continued to grow and just fall. So eventually, after several scans and investigations, like I said, they found a tumour. Not only did I have a stroke, but I also had a tumour to contend with. Was it malignant? Did I have cancer? Those were the questions running through my mind. I became an expert on different procedures like biopsies, angiograms. I was prodded and poked and pricked with needles so many times it was unbelievable. But the doctors were just not happy to just leave it at that. They wanted to find out everything about me, which I was grateful for. So this next extract talks about the complications. So the discovery of further complications. From the moment I was taken to hospital, the doctors and consultants were confounded by what had happened to me. All I kept hearing from them was, "She is so young, what a shame. What caused it?" They said that I didn't have any triggers for a stroke or any other health problems. On the whole, they said I was exceptionally fit. So the million-dollar question was, what had caused this healthy 42-year-old woman to have this devastating stroke? So the investigations began. I was sent for various ultrasound scans and MRI scans, x-rays and blood tests. I was an interesting subject to the medical profession. This was because I was a medical phenomenon, and I was young, intelligent and educated, so the specialists and consultants took a liking to me, and as a result felt they could explain to me in great detail each and every stage of my investigations and the reasons why they were doing what they were doing. The fact that I was inquisitive also helped the process. I appreciated this very much, as others at times spoke to me like I was invisible or incapable of understanding anything. I suspect many people who suffer with a brain injury face the same attitudinal behaviour from those around them. The MRI scan showed that I had a rupture in my artery in my neck, which caused the bleed and subsequent stroke. Am I going to have another stroke, a heart attack? Do I have hours left, days, months, etc.? All these questions bewildered me and could not be answered by the experts at this stage because they didn't know. The only thing they could tell me was that everything was stable for the moment and that I was not in any imminent danger. Phew. That's how I felt when they told me that. They also told me that the MRI scan showed a mass in my neck. They could not be sure what it was, but they would have to further investigate. A mass of what? Blood, bone, flesh, bristle, or something foreign like an alien? Now I was really frightened. That night I worried and prayed relentlessly. I asked the Almighty what I had done to offend me. Why me? First a stroke, now something possibly more sinister. What could be more sinister? Lord, if I must die, why must I suffer? I became really depressed and frightened. I was starting to realise that people immediately around me wanted to talk for me or at me and make decisions for me. They were not interested in what I had to say. I had no one to talk to about my feelings. I was in a void of my own. I was in the twilight zone. From that moment on, I immersed myself into reading books and music, daydreaming and visioning myself in a different place, time, and being healthy. I was grieving the loss of my pre-stroke self. Reality set in. Is this the beginning of the end for me? What kind of bleed? Is it still bleeding? Am I slowly dying? What kind of damage has it caused? And is it still causing damage? How long have I got? So that tells you the sort of state of mind I was in at that time, sort of in turmoil really. So why write this book? So whilst going through a melee of emotional, physical, mental, spiritual turmoil, I thought no one would believe what I'm going through because no one wanted to listen to me at that time. Because on the surface I looked disfigured, disabled, through losing myself, mourning my own death, and coming to terms with the new me with limitations. I write about all my losses, the loss of myself, my mind, my marriage, my father, my career, my sanity, my confidence, the near loss of my children, and my mojo, the spark that made me me. So what's next for me? Well, I left youth justice because it was too much. The day I decided to leave, a young man was stabbed in the street and walked into the building, and the other managers left me to deal with it. And I had my walking stick. I couldn't do much physically, but I had to deal with that scenario. So I decided then that I would take the redundancy, take some time out, because my dad had just died, and then think about what I was going to do with this. So now I'm a therapist. I'm a cognitive behavioural therapist, a psychological therapist, and I work with children and families. And I also provide therapy to NHS staff. I would like to write more, but not sure in what direction I will take. Whether it's a continuation of my journey, or it might be about parenting black boys, because I'm passionate about the way black boys are treated in this country and the struggles that they face. Or it might be work related. I might write a book about parenting children and young people presenting with mental health issues and how parents can support them. I've not decided yet, or maybe I'll write all three or something completely different. I also want to organise a World Women event. Having gone through a major health issue, menopause, parenting, relationship issues, divorce, physical health needs, I believe there is a need for sisters to get together to chew the fat. Don't you agree, ladies?
Yes.
If you're interested in my plans, leave me your contact details and I'll let you know what's happening as I go on. Now I'm going to end with one of two poems I wrote in the book. So this poem is called Wide Awake in a Dream. Now, I have never written poetry before, so this sort of just came to me as I was writing the book. I am wide awake in a dream. Is this really as it seems? Dying a premature death and mourning the time I took my last breath. The fear of your rebirth, not knowing what's to come for what it's worth. Falling to the depths one should never see was a place I had to be. In order to emerge from my new natural shell, weak, confused and vulnerable as hell, not knowing what lay ahead for me, just knowing that I was still here for my children to see. I put my life and faith in the Almighty Lord, knowing that He would direct me on the new path I must forge. Removing all negative elements from my life, clearing the way for a new light. Knowing this is the hardest to bear, but I know that the Almighty will provide me with someone who will care. I know in my heart of hearts that everything happens for a reason. I know that this is my season. Yes, it's true. Life can be mean, but still, I'm wide awake in a dream.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Rosie and Daisy?
I've got a question. I just want to say, Rosalie, I mean, I've known Rosalie for many, many years. I've had her as a book, and just thank you for sharing the story. And we love yours, and we will always love you. Okay? You've been a support and an inspiration to me, and I will never ever forget that. And just always remember that you have a lot of love around you. Okay? Never forget that.
Any questions at all on what you've heard? And lay it back, please.
Just to build, we are related, so it is a bit biased. But whilst my cousin has told you the story, what she hasn't brought to life to you is the fight. despite what she's articulated about the experience, how it felt, and what she had to endure, the spirit of fight was never lost. And it was very evident from the very first day, when she was in that hospital, unable to really communicate, the fight would in her eyes. And the story is, in a sense, a lesson to everybody, regardless of how you may fall, it is about how you learn to rise. Do not feel the defeat, or allow the defeat to take away the person who you are. So her story is a way of explaining to you all what it meant to go through, what she had, and how she's arrived today, and the chapters that she's building for today.
You can understand that the fight was aided by my faith. If I didn't have faith, I wouldn't have survived. Because my faith is what got me through.
Okay. Any more questions at all?
How did you physically kind of get yourself together? Like when you have a stroke, I mean, it physically destroys you. So how did you get yourself back up? You have a new career. I'm sure that you're helping, like the NHS staff is like to mind-blowing proportions. So how did you get kind of yourself back into everything?
I spoke about my children. They were the ones that gave me strength. I mean, all of them needed me in different ways, and I wasn't available to them yet. I was in hospital for 8 months. It's a long time. So, to me, it's very important to show them that I have to get through this. So, I just turned myself to the Almighty and opened up myself to Him. And He's helped me. He's helped me. I was able to learn to drive again. I was able to, after leaving my job, get a job with something that I really enjoyed and was interested in. Because when I got to youth justice, I was responsible for the mental health aspect of that. And I don't know, I just think I just pushed myself with the belief that I have to get through this.
I think that's awesome. Brilliant.
And I think that comes from my parents as well, because they were wing-rush parents. So they dealt with a lot of racism and rejection and all the rest of it. And so I got with a lot of being shown a lot of strength and how you deal with diversity and get to where you need to get to.
Very, very deep. Wow. So, any more questions at all?
I can kind of, I mean, I personally haven't gone for a stroke, but I can kind of relate to your story in the effect that my mother, who was in her 60s, had gone through a severe stroke. She was walking through the flats and slipped on what she thought was concrete, but it was flat ice. And after that week, her progress started to slow down quite a bit. Face started to go, and suddenly she lost all sense of collapse. At the time I was involved, this is well over 20 years ago, and it was only receiving a phone call from my father to tell me that Mother's in the hospital, you need to come down to London for Bournemouth. I was studying 3 years ago. When I came, all that I kept thinking was that, oh no, is she okay? Is she gonna, the worst things or thoughts coming through to my mind? But when I actually entered her room, the ward, it was packed with people, and she was just there on the bed, as if nothing had actually happened, and I was kind of puzzled. But anyway, sometime afterwards, I had spoken to the doctors. They actually said, confirmed that as a result of stroke and concussions of the head, they basically had to operate on the brain because she had clots, 3 clots on the brain. And they said it's going to be a very delicate procedure, and we don't know, it could be 50-50. With my mum, I think what kind of got her through was the fact that she's a Christian, and she just gives all of her, she always devotes all her belief and love of God, and I believe that's what kind of pulled her through, because there was no other explanation for it. The operation actually was a success, which was good, but then obviously she was still kind of slow, one side was a bit limp, and then after, I think, 3-6 months, she regained her full senses and was able to kind of function. And at the same time, she was also running a community centre for elderly people that wanted to keep themselves busy. And I think as a result of coming through all of that, it just made her much more compelled to even work even harder as well to make the business that her and Fred was running a much more successful thing. And more of a purpose as well to kind of get through and push. So your story is very inspiring to many others that may have gone through similar experiences, or some ones that they may know that have gone through it as well, that may be feeling a bit depressed. And if they can hear more what you say as well, you know, it could really flourish.
Too racy, yeah. So she let me read some of her books, and that's how I got into romance. However, my mum was into romance, but I actually was into a range of genres really. So I'd read anything. So fiction, non-fiction, fantasy, science fiction, sagas, whatever. As long as it was interesting, I would read it. And so I think from that point there, I just sort of wanted to write, because I did love writing. I loved the English subject. And I'll start a book and not finish it. So I'll get to about chapter 3 or 4 and it would just be a block. I just couldn't get past that. And this kept happening throughout my teens, throughout my 20s. And my mum used to say to me, why do you keep starting books and finishing it? I'm like, I don't even know. I just get to chapter 3 or 4 and there's just nothing in my head. I can't move the story forward. And in all this time, would you believe, I've never picked up a book on, imagine I'm a reader, and I've never picked up a book on writing. And I think it never occurred to me that because I love to read and because I love to write, doesn't mean that I can write. Okay, so I got to a certain age and I said to myself, do you know what, I've been doing this for how many years now, and I really need to, this is a goal I want to reach. And so I said, I'm going to write my book before I get to 50. And I just thought, now how am I going to write this book, because I keep stopping and starting. So what I did was I started purchasing books and reading blogs about writing. So it took me 30 odd years to, it was like, okay, a light bulb moment. And I finally realised why I wasn't finishing these books. And I realised that I am actually a plotter, not a pantser. So there's apparently 2 types of writers. There's writers that they have the seed, the idea, and they just start typing or writing. And there's writers that need to plan and plot and do their research. And that's the type of writer I was. And it opened, once I knew I had a framework for plotting, it kind of opened the floodgates for me. Because what I did was I started with short stories, plotted them out, planning them out, and I got from the beginning to the end in a more structured way and in a more self-aware way. So then I had to think about, okay, so I want to write romance. I think I want to write romance, but when you look at mainstream romance, it's very European-centered. There aren't even really black or non-black characters, supporting characters. You just don't even see that. And we've all grown up, I'm sure, watching period dramas, right? Where are the people of colour? More recently, we've had Bridgerton, that kind of has blown up, right? And people are like, hey. I'm a great reader of historical fiction, so non-fiction, not fiction. So I've read books about the African diaspora, pre-slavery, slavery, post-slavery. And I just felt like I need to bring this together, a bit of education, a bit of entertainment as well. And I started reading books by an author called Beverly Jenkins. And she's a black historical author, and she bases most of her stories in the black West of America, which is another subject that is not very well known. A lot of black people have come down from the south and gone to the west and set up black towns and townships and what have you. So I kind of read that and I thought, I think this is where I'm at. Now I've already been doing the research and reading books like Staying Power by Peter Fryer, Black and British, Lady on a Saga, Blackjacks, Jeffrey W. Archer. So I'd already been doing the research and I just thought, let me kind of bring it all together. But what I'll do is I'll focus on Britain, because there's a lot of misconceptions about the black and mixed race presence in Britain. People act as if we weren't here, or if we were just slaves on a plantation. And so I wanted to show that we were here, and we were here in our thousands, in fact, and we were very significant. We were in the military, we were craftspeople, we were artisans, we were business owners, we were politicians, we were artists, you name it, we were in every walk of life. My favourite era is the 19th century, and so I focused on the 19th century. and I wanted to just show how we were able to connect in England, in particular London, from different parts of the diaspora. So whether it was Africans, whether it was Americans, whether it was Caribbeans, coming to London within a growing empire. So for different reasons, we would come to London. And I kind of brought it together in such a way that hopefully it's engaging and it's entertaining, and at the same time, people will learn about that black and mixed race presence in London, and about the fact that we did lead the fight in terms of fighting for our rights, but we also led very extraordinary lives as well. You know, we led significant lives during those eras. And that's really how I came to this point in terms of writing the book. And so I'd like to just read the synopsis. I'm going to read it from my phone because I have a visual impediment and I need big words. Okay, so a modern love story opens the door to a long ago love and a shared history. It is 1880. Celia Robinson is a financially independent young black woman living in her adopted family's London townhouse for the season. Celia and her childhood friend Edward Langdon have recently fallen in love, but have kept it a secret from Ed's grandmother, Lady Benwick, who is also Celia's guardian. Although they have always existed, relationships between different classes and races are often disapproved of across all levels of society. Ed believes love can overcome anything. However, despite Celia's comfortable middle-class upbringing, she is doubtful and procrastinates over accepting his secret marriage proposal. Fate soon intervenes when old flame Nathan, the son of a wealthy Sierra Leone merchant, returns to London from New York. Celia is conflicted as dormant feelings are stirred up. Meanwhile, Lady Benwick and Ed are hiding deeply disturbing moral and financial predicaments from Celia in order to protect their family's aristocratic legacy. Little do the couple realise the intricate web of manipulation Lady Benwick is weaving behind the scenes. Thank you.
Any questions at all?
How long did it take you to write your book?
So I would say from the research point to publication, I published it at the end of July. It was 5 years. I just think it's just a process of life. I was my mum's informal, or my late mum's informal carer for about 9 years. So I was juggling that with work, you know, with other issues, and just trying to get the book out. But I suppose from a technical aspect, it took me about 3 to 4 months to do the initial research. Not just books, but you know, places like the British Library, English Heritage, UCL was really good as well, University College London. They had a map of black and mixed race people living in Victorian London, and it really gave me an idea of how we would have interacted during that time and how I could thread everything together in that respect. So that took about 3 to 4 months, and then after I stopped procrastinating, because I'm a researcher, so if I could have just researched the whole time, I would have just researched, but I then started writing, and that took me about a year to finish the book, and then about 3 months of self-editing, and then it just sat there, because I didn't really know what to do with it, and I didn't really know how to move forward with the publishing process. But long story short, I eventually decided to go for a hybrid publishing deal where you make an investment in yourself. It's kind of a mixture between self-publishing and traditional publishing. And then the publisher just sort of took it on, and here we are, here I am today. Thank you. Dennis and then Miss Lady. Yeah.
How did you discover what type of writer you are? How did you
I think, because especially with fiction, and I've got I have to think of my business head as well. I've got a business head. My background is a business educator, okay? So I'm not just looking at, I'm looking at what I love to read and the type of writers I love to read. And so in a way, when I'm thinking of my target market, I'm thinking, I am my target market. And I'm going to write to an audience of one, because I know there's other people who like what I read. Do you know what I mean? So I read really popular writers. And so that's how I kind of hone my style. I just kept in my mind, what do you like about other writers in the way that they write and the way that they narrate and pull things together? And I kind of kept the focus like that. But then of course I have a business head on and I'm thinking, okay, like where do I fit into this market? Because I want it to be my side hustle. Do you know what I mean? And the black historical romance genre is a subgenre of historical romance, right? But it's high demand, but low supply. There's not a lot of writers in that genre. And there's not just black writers in that genre. There are writers from different races and backgrounds in that genre. So I think that's an assumption a lot of people make, but no, there's different writers from different races and backgrounds, funny enough. But yeah, it's about that. So sorry.
Oh, I just love listening to you. I've got 3 questions.
Oh, that's fine.
That's all right. The first one, you talked about the books that you enjoy reading that kind of gave you that, moving in that direction. Do you have any that you would recommend?
Oh, okay. So I have a book list in the book. So some of the books, I'll tell you some of the books. So there's Staying Power by Peter Fryer. If you're a reader, that's for you. If you're not, it's a long book. So I'm thinking, if you want the same type of feel, it's probably better to go for Black and British by David Olasada. It's the same type of feel, but it's a bit shorter. And there's a new one out recently actually called Hidden Histories. If you come and talk to me, I'll look in my Kindle and I'll give you the right title. It's really short, and it's almost like a summary of all these books that have come out in the last 15 to 20 years. But there's one book I will tell you about that I found quite fascinating, and I actually was dreading doing the research for it. Because I had to, the main character, Celia, her father was a seafarer. And so I had to read about seafarers and black seafarers. And so I had to read a book called Blackjacks by Jeffrey W. Bolster. And I thought, oh God, this is going to be so dry and boring. And I started the book, and let me tell you, I've read the book twice, and I've gone back and read my highlights. It is the most fantastic story. These group of people, they come in like a telegraph system around the diaspora. So whatever was going on around the diaspora, they would take it around the diaspora. And so black people around the diaspora, oh, this is happening in London. Well, yeah, we can do that. This is happening in the Caribbean. We can do that. This is happening in Africa. So it's a really fascinating story about being successful and doing things in the face of adversity. And you think, it's for us living now, you think, how were you able to do that back then? It's very inspiring, so I would recommend that book. But if you come to me afterwards, like, we go through my...
So I will spare the other question because it's in the same vein.
Yeah.
And then the last question, while you were sharing the excerpt from your book, I hadn't watched Bridgerton. But while you were reading your story, I was like, and I don't read fiction. I just recently read a novel, and I was like, I'm going to start leaning into fiction because I just don't read it. I've read 2 novels in the last 20 years. Why so shocked?
So you prefer non-fiction?
I haven't read anything.
Yeah, you prefer non-fiction. Yeah, a lot of people prefer non-fiction.
I read non-fiction.
Yeah, different strokes, different folks, right?
But when you were reading, I got really into it. And I want to know what happened. And then I started seeing it.
Yeah.
And I did wonder if you would consider producing it.
See, I get this question a lot. Do you know that? It's so mad. I think.
Then you need to message me.
you know, even me saying it's very surreal. Do you know what I mean? Like when I first looked at it and I thought, I know I wrote it, but did you write this? You know, it's like once it's off the table, it's like I'm here and it's there. And I understand, obviously with TV and movies and whatever, I get that if I do the marketing right, it will maybe come to somebody's attention. So I get that from that perspective. Yeah. The lady at the back.
Yes, I started in touch with what you're saying. The English teacher used mother, lovely and booze. And that's how I got into reading as well. And she used to, I went to school able to read and write and annoyed the teachers because I read out the library by the time I was 8. And as an English teacher, I was for 5 years literally trying to find a teen book, a young adult book, with a black female positive character, where there aren't stereotypes, especially stereotypes around violent black men. Now that might sound shocking in 2024, but it's very, very, very difficult to find. Black adult teen fiction is either full of those terrible gang stereotypes. I've got one in my bag now, and it's beautifully written, The Upper World, but it's full of a gang stereotype.
Yeah.
And it's a fantasy, well written, African Nigerian Cambridge graduate, but it feeds into all of those stereotypes. And I just wanted to know, did your book avoid that? And was Celia's relationship with a black person, or was it black and white? And that's the other thing I can't find, where there was a strong black couple.
Well, I can't give too much away. But she's in a love triangle with a white man.
Don't say more.
Yeah. I can't give too much away. But no, I don't. The thing is, my book, the whole point is about setting the record straight and moving away from stereotypes and past. So yeah, it's based in the 19th century, but it's moving away from stereotypes. And what I've done actually is focus on the black elite. And what does that mean? That doesn't mean that, you know, the black elite is different from any other type of elite. Do you understand? So it's elite in the sense that you didn't necessarily have wealth, or you could have wealth, but you had influence. You had influence on your people. You had influence on your allies. Yeah, you had influence on your allies. Do you understand? So it's about saying, I'm up here and I'm going to turn around and I'm going to pull you up here. So it was about how we came together and got on cold and how we worked with our allies. You know, I definitely think we have to acknowledge our allies, okay, white, Indian, whoever. So it's how we came together with our allies to get what we needed to get in that respect. But I make it clear we didn't have any white saviors. We didn't have that. We led the way, but we had allies. And I think my book is moving far away from this kind of trope that we were only on the plantation and we were down here all the time. We had some very successful, you know, black people during that period of time. So it is moving away from that. And I think the fact that it's based in London even more so. Yes, Bridgerton is, I like it in a sense, it's kind of reimagined. Mine is not reimagined. Mine is real. Yeah, the research is real. And yes, like I said, we were here, and we are up here. We're not a monolith. You know, and I think that's where I think I just sort of set the record straight. I have the book list, the reading list, so if there's anything that needs to be distributed, go to the historians in the back of the list and go confirm. You know, don't listen to me, listen to them. So
I can actually add that you remind me of Annie Domingo. I can't remember her book, it's just gone out of my head. She wrote a brilliant piece of fiction about the life of Sarah Vanessa Forbes.
Oh yes.
Yeah, the
yes.
so-called goddaughter, how you can give a human being to another is beyond my comprehension. But anyway, she's a so-called gift Queen Victoria. And she became a goddaughter. And it's kind of written with two narrative voices, one of Sarah and then one of her sister who have a completely opposite experience. And she spent hours researching the British Museum Library. And in a very famous biography of Queen Victoria, there was no mention of this African goddaughter. None. But when they went to the newspapers, they found lots of stories about the so-called black princess.
you visit Osborne House in Isle of Wight, you'll actually see a bust of Sarah.
Okay.
She was very prominent in Queen Victoria's time.
Yes.
She was celebrated and respected.
Yeah.
It was just society didn't. But she's a good Victorian for you to put on reserve. She did go on to marry a
Yeah,
black
I know.
African.
Actually, you know what? She's on the UCL map. She's actually on the UCL map as well. So
So
it's
she
really
did marry
interesting life.
Yeah, I know.
She married an African.
But she died quite young, didn't she?
She did, yes. She died in, yeah.
Okay, sorry folks, so
Sorry.
time has caught up to us unfortunately. So we're going to have to
What
wrap.
time's the Bible say?
You're here.
Working this time? She locked the door?
Can we have a round of applause for So I want to say thank you to everybody for coming here today. I want to also say thanks to all of our authors and the and please go speak to the authors.
Definitely will. You could just take a picture of me and...
Yeah. Which button do I press?
It's on already. It's on already.
Oh.
Yeah, it's already filming. Yeah.
Just press a button. Just
It's already there.
Do I need to press?
No. To press, it's already on.
Yeah.
It's already on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I can take a picture even from my phone.
Oh yeah, you can do that as well. That's all right.
Yeah.
This is taking the whole shot.
Let me take a picture of you.
The thing about technology is people always say very well.
Sonji. Is it Sonji's book?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sonji, I think you got a customer.
She's alright, she's done. Okay. Here is your book.
Yeah, in the book,
would be to have like a YouTube channel and kind of showcase this kind of have a range of which is conversation.